My name is Alara Quinn. I'm 29 years old. And I need you to understand something right now. While I was lying in a hospital bed for 21 days, tubes in my arms, fighting pneumonia that nearly killed me, my own father walked into my house and gave it to my sister. My house. The one I bought with my own money. The one I sacrificed everything for. 21 days. That's all it took for my family to decide I didn't matter anymore. When I finally came home, weak, barely able to walk up the stairs, I found my father standing in my living room like he owned the place. My sister was there too, unpacking boxes, rearranging my furniture. And when I asked what the hell was going on, you know what he said to me? He looked me straight in the eye, no hesitation, no remorse, and said, "It's no longer yours. Don't come back." I stood there, shaking, my lungs still burning from the infection, and all I could say was, "Enjoy it." Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what it feels like to lose everything while you're fighting just to breathe? While doctors are telling you that you might not make it through the night. I was alone in that hospital. Alone. No visitors. No phone calls asking if I was okay. Nothing. And the whole time, they were plotting. Planning. Dividing up my life like I was already dead. That house wasn't just a house to me. It was proof. Proof that I made it. Proof that despite growing up with nothing, despite being told I'd never amount to anything, despite every single obstacle they threw in my way, I did it. I bought that house at 27 years old. By myself. No help from anyone. I worked 2 jobs for 3 years. I skipped meals. I wore the same clothes until they fell apart. I said no to every invitation, every trip, every moment of joy, because I was saving. Because I had a dream. And in 21 days, they stole it from me. You want to know the worst part? It's not even the house. It's the look on his face when he said it. Like I was nothing. Like I was an inconvenience he finally found a way to get rid of. My own father. The man who was supposed to protect me. The man who told me when I was a little girl that he'd always be there for me. He looked at me like I was garbage. My sister didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She just stood there, smirking, surrounded by MY things, in MY house, acting like she deserved it. Like she earned it. She's never worked a real day in her life. Everything has always been handed to her. And now this too. I left that day with nothing but the clothes on my back and a heart so broken I didn't think it would ever beat properly again. I was homeless. Sick. Betrayed by the only people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what they couldn't have possibly understood about me. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in front of them. I saved my tears for later, alone in a cheap motel room, because I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Before I tell you what happened the week after, think carefully, what would you have done in my place? Let me show you why that house meant more to me than 4 walls and a key. I was 24 when I decided I was done living in someone else's space, done asking permission, done feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. I wanted a home, not just a place to sleep, a home. Something that was mine. Something no one could take away from me. Or so I thought. For 3 years, I worked like a machine. My main job was at a marketing firm, 9 to 6, Monday through Friday. Sounds reasonable, right? Except I'd leave that office and go straight to my second job waitressing at a diner until midnight. Sometimes 1 in the morning. Then I'd go home, sleep 4 hours, and do it all over again. Weekends? I picked up catering gigs. Birthday parties. Corporate events. Weddings where I'd watch happy families celebrate together, while mine couldn't even bother to call and ask how I was doing. Every single dollar I made, I saved. I didn't go out. I didn't buy new clothes. I wore shoes with holes in them because new ones weren't in the budget. My friends stopped inviting me places because I always said no. Always. Coffee? No. Movies? No. Weekend trips? Absolutely not. They thought I was boring. Obsessed. Maybe I was. But I had a goal, and nothing was going to stop me. My sister? She was 26 at the time, living rent-free in my parents' house, sleeping until noon, posting on social media about brunch and shopping trips funded by our father. And somehow, I was the problem child. I was the one who didn't visit enough. I was the one who cared more about money than family. Do you see the irony? I was killing myself to build something, and they resented me for it. When I finally had enough for a down payment, I remember the day I signed those papers. My hands were shaking. The real estate agent smiled at me and said, "Congratulations, you're a homeowner." I cried right there in her office. 27 years old, and I'd done it completely on my own. I called my parents to share the news. You know what my father said? "That's nice, Alara. Your sister's thinking about getting a dog." That was it. No congratulations. No pride. Just indifference. But I didn't care. I had my house. It was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that desperately needed updating. But it was mine. And I poured everything into it. I painted every wall myself. I learned how to install new cabinet handles from YouTube videos. I spent weekends at hardware stores, asking questions, figuring out how to fix a leaky faucet, how to refinish hardwood floors. My hands were constantly covered in paint or cuts or bruises. I didn't care. Every improvement, every tiny change, I did it. Me. Nobody else. I chose every paint color carefully. Soft blue for the living room because it made me feel calm after those brutal double shifts. Warm yellow for the kitchen because I wanted it to feel like sunshine. I planted flowers in the front yard, petunias and marigolds, because they reminded me of my grandmother, the only person in my family who ever believed in me before she passed. That house was my sanctuary, my proof. My middle finger to everyone who said I'd never make it. And my family? They visited exactly once. My mother walked through, made a comment about the neighborhood not being nice enough, and my sister spent the whole time on her phone. My father looked around and said, "Must be nice to have daddy's money to fall back on if you can't make the mortgage." Except I never asked him for a dime. Not once. But that didn't matter to him. In his eyes, my sister was the golden child, and I was just there. So when they took it from me, they didn't just take a house. They took every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of pain and pride and hope. They took the only thing I'd ever built that was entirely my own. While I was lying there hooked to machines, I had no idea a betrayal was unfolding back home. It started with a cough. Just a stupid cough that wouldn't go away. I ignored it for a week because I couldn't afford to miss work. I had a mortgage to pay, bills stacking up, and taking sick days meant losing money I didn't have. So I pushed through, took some over-the-counter medicine, and told myself I'd be fine. But I wasn't fine. One morning I woke up and couldn't breathe. I was gasping, clawing at my throat, trying to pull air into my lungs, and nothing was working. My chest felt like someone was standing on it. My vision started going dark around the edges. I managed to call 911 before I collapsed on my kitchen floor, that beautiful yellow kitchen I'd painted myself, not knowing if I'd ever see it again. The ambulance came. The paramedics were talking to me, but their voices sounded like they were underwater. I remember the oxygen mask, the sirens, the fluorescent lights of the emergency room burning my eyes. And then a doctor leaning over me saying, "Severe pneumonia. Both lungs. We need to admit you immediately." 21 days. That's how long I was in that hospital. 3 weeks of my life trapped in a sterile room that smelled like disinfectant and death, hooked up to 4 drips and oxygen tanks, watching my body fail me one day at a time. You want to know the worst part? The silence. The absolute, crushing silence. My phone sat on the table next to my bed, and it barely rang. No visits from my parents. No flowers from my sister. Nothing. The nurses started asking if I wanted them to call someone for me, and I had to pretend I preferred being alone. I had to lie and say I didn't want to burden anyone, when the truth was, nobody cared enough to come. Day 3, I texted my father. "I'm in the hospital. Pneumonia. It's bad." He responded 6 hours later. "Hope you feel better soon." That was it. No, which hospital? No, do you need anything? Just, hope you feel better soon. Like I had a common cold. My sister didn't respond at all. I'd lie there at night, listening to machines beep, watching other patients get visitors, families bringing balloons and cards and love, and I felt so pathetically alone. I'd worked myself into the ground for years, sacrificed everything, and when I actually needed someone, I had nobody. Most people never see betrayal coming. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment mine hit. By day 10, I couldn't walk to the bathroom without help. My lungs were so damaged the doctors weren't sure I'd recover full capacity. I overheard one nurse tell another that I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt abandoned, forgotten, left to die alone in a room that wasn't mine. Every day, I'd think about my house, my sanctuary. I'd close my eyes and picture my blue living room, my yellow kitchen, my little garden with the petunias. I told myself that once I got out, I'd go home and recover there. That my house would heal me the way these doctors and machines couldn't. I had no idea that while I was fighting for my life, my father had already walked through my front door with a locksmith. That he was already changing the locks. That my sister was already packing her things, preparing to move into my bedroom, sleep in my bed, live my life. On day 14, I got a message that made my heart stop. What I saw in that message didn't just hurt, it shattered me. It was from a neighbor, Mrs. Chun, the elderly woman who lived 2 houses down. She'd always been kind to me, waving when I came home from work, complimenting my flowers. We weren't close, but she was decent. More decent than my own family, apparently. The message said, "Alara, I don't know if you know, but there's been a lot of activity at your house. Your father came by with the moving truck. I thought you should know. I'm sorry." My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. There was a photo attached. I didn't want to open it. Some part of me knew that whatever I was about to see would destroy me. But I couldn't stop myself. I tapped it. There it was. My house. My house. And there was my father's truck in the driveway. My sister standing on MY porch, holding MY's spare key, laughing at something someone said. Behind her, I could see boxes. My boxes. My things. Being carried out of my house like trash. I couldn't breathe. And this time it wasn't the pneumonia. This was different. This was my chest caving in from the inside out. This was my heart physically breaking into pieces, so small, I knew I'd never put them back together. The 4 drip was beeping. That steady, mechanical beep that had become the soundtrack to my imprisonment. But suddenly it was so loud. So unbearably loud. Everything was too loud. The machines, the footsteps in the hallway, the blood rushing in my ears. I tried to call him. My father. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely dial. It rang 4 times before he answered, and I'll never forget the casual tone in his voice. Like he was talking to a telemarketer. Like I was nothing. "Dad, what's going on?" Mrs. Chin sent me a photo. He cut me off. "Alara, we need to talk about this when you're better." When I'm better? When I'm better? He was dismantling my entire life and telling me we discuss it later? What are you doing with my house? My voice cracked. I hated how weak I sounded. How desperate. Your sister needs a place. You're sick. You can't take care of it right now. This is what's best for the family. Best for the family. Not best for me. Best for the family that abandoned me in a hospital. Best for the sister who never worked for anything in her life. Best for everyone except the person who actually bought that house, who sacrificed everything for it. "You can't do this," I whispered. "That's my house. I bought it. It's in MY name. We'll sort out the paperwork later. Right now, you need to focus on getting well." And then he hung up. Just hung up. Like I was a problem he could deal with later. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. My whole body had gone cold. Not hospital room cold. Deeper. Like my blood had turned to ice. Like I'd been submerged in freezing water and was slowly going numb from the inside out. The nurse came in for her evening rounds. She was the nice one, Sarah, with the kind eyes and the patience of a saint. She took one look at my face and stopped in her tracks. "Honey, what's wrong? Your oxygen levels are dropping. Are you in pain?" Was I in pain? What a question. My lungs were damaged, sure. But that pain was nothing compared to this. That pain would heal. This was permanent. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head and handed her my phone with the photos still on the screen. She looked at it, then at me, and I saw something shift in her expression. Understanding.
Pity.
"Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, and that gentle tone almost broke me completely. But I didn't cry.
Not then.
I just stared at the ceiling, at the fluorescent lights that never turned off, and let the truth settle into my bones like poison. That was the moment I realized I had no home to return to. 1 week later, I walked back into my own life, and I didn't recognize it anymore. The hospital discharged me on a Tuesday morning. My lungs were still weak. My body still felt like it had been hit by a truck, but the doctors said there was nothing more they could do for me there. I needed rest. I needed to recover at home. Except I didn't know I didn't have a home anymore. Not really. I took a taxi because I was too weak to drive, and I had no one to pick me up. The whole ride, I kept thinking about my blue living room, my yellow kitchen, my bed. I just wanted to sleep in my own bed. Was that too much to ask? After everything I'd been through, couldn't I just have that one simple thing? When we pulled up to my house, the first thing I saw was my sister's car in the driveway. My driveway. I thought maybe she'd stopped by to check on the place. Maybe she was watering my plants or collecting my mail. I actually gave her the benefit of the doubt. That's how naive I was. Even after that phone call, some stupid part of me hoped I'd misunderstood. I paid the driver and walked up to my front door, my legs shaking from exhaustion. I pulled out my key, the key I'd carried every single day for 2 years, the key that represented everything I'd worked for, and I slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. The key didn't fit anymore. Someone had changed my locks. Someone had changed the locks on my house while I was fighting for my life in a hospital bed. My hands started trembling again, but this time it wasn't from weakness. It was rage. Pure, burning rage building up inside me like a volcano about to erupt. I rang the doorbell. My doorbell. And I waited. I heard voices inside. Laughter. Music playing. They were having a good time in there. In my house. The door opened and there was my father. Standing in my entryway, like he owned the place. Like he had any right to be there. "Ilara," he said, and his voice was so cold. So detached. "You shouldn't be here." I pushed past him, or tried to. I was too weak. He barely had to move to block me. And that's when I saw her. My sister, sitting on my couch, my mother beside her. Boxes everywhere. They'd already moved in.
Completely.
My things were gone. Their things were there instead. "What is this?" I asked, even though I already knew. I just needed to hear him say it out loud. "Your sister needs a place to stay. You were sick. You couldn't manage the house. So we made arrangements." Arrangements? He made arrangements with my life. With my property. With everything I'd sacrificed for. "This is my house," I said, my voice getting louder. "I bought this house. It's in my name. You can't just take it." He looked at me with eyes so empty, I wondered if he'd ever actually loved me at all. And then he said it. The words that will haunt me for the rest of my life. "It's no longer yours. Don't come back." The room went silent. Even my sister stopped smirking for a second. My mother looked away. And I just stood there, barely able to stand, barely able to breathe, feeling everything I'd ever built crumble to dust. I could have screamed. I could have called the police right then and there. I could have fought. But I was so tired. So broken. So completely hollowed out that I had nothing left to give them. So I looked at my father, this man I'd called Dad for 29 years, and I said 2 words. Just 2 words. "Enjoy it." And I walked away. I turned around, walked out of my own house, and didn't look back. Not because I was weak. Not because I was giving up. But because in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. They expected me to fall apart. They expected me to beg. They expected me to make a scene so they could justify what they'd done. Paint me as the crazy, unstable daughter who couldn't handle her own life. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I got back in the taxi that was still waiting and told the driver to take me anywhere. Anywhere but there. And as we drove away, I stopped crying. I stopped shaking. My hands went steady. My mind went clear. I was done being the victim. Done being the daughter who tried so hard to make them proud. Done sacrificing myself for people who saw me as disposable. They took my house. But they made one critical mistake. They forgot who I was. They forgot what I was capable of when I had nothing left to lose. Was I wrong for walking away without a fight? Tell me in the comments. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I simply prepared and waited. That first night after walking away, I sat in a motel room that smelled like stale cigarettes and regret, and I made a choice. I could let them destroy me, or I could destroy the narrative they'd written about me. The weak daughter. The sick girl who couldn't handle her own life. The one they could discard and forget. I chose to rewrite the story. The next morning, I walked into a law office. My body was still recovering, but my mind had never been clearer. I brought every document I had, the deed to my house with MY name on it, mortgage statements, payment records, renovation receipts. Everything. The lawyer, an older woman named Patricia, looked at the papers and then looked at me. "This is pretty straightforward," she said. "The house is legally yours. They can't just take it. This is theft. Illegal eviction." Those words. Illegal eviction. Theft. I felt something shift inside me. Validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. They were. But here's what Patricia told me next that changed everything. "We can fight this and win easily. But if you want to make sure this never happens again, we need to go beyond just getting your house back. We need to ensure they understand there are consequences." So we built a case. Not just about the house. About everything. The changed locks. The forged signatures on documents my father had created to try to legitimize the transfer. The fact that he'd moved my sister in and tried to establish residency while I was hospitalized. Every text message. Every ignored call. Every piece of evidence that showed premeditation and malice. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sleeping in that awful motel, eating ramen noodles because legal fees were draining what little savings I had left, visiting the house from across the street just to watch them live my life. My sister posted photos on social media, my living room in the background, my kitchen counters, acting like she'd earned any of it. But I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just screenshotted everything. Evidence. Proof. Ammunition. Before I reveal how I took back control, tell me, should family be allowed second chances? Yes or no? On day 21, exactly 21 days after I'd left the hospital, as if the universe had a sense of irony, Patricia called me. "We're ready. I've filed the eviction notice and the lawsuit. The sheriff will serve them tomorrow morning." I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, imagining their faces when they realized what was coming. The next day, I went back to my house. But this time, I wasn't alone. I had Patricia, a police officer, and a locksmith. When my father opened the door and saw us standing there, his face went white. "What is this?" he demanded, but his voice wasn't cold anymore. It was panicked. Patricia handed him the papers. "This is an illegal eviction notice. Your daughter is the legal owner of this property. You have 72 hours to vacate, or you'll be forcibly removed. Additionally, you're being served with a lawsuit for fraud, theft, and emotional distress." I watched him read those papers, watched his hands shake the way mine had shaken when I saw that photo in the hospital. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No revenge-fueled joy. Just emptiness where my love for him used to be. My sister came to the door, saw what was happening, and had the audacity to cry. "Ilara, please. We're family. You can't do this to us." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I finally understood. She'd never seen me as a sister. Just as someone whose life looked easier than hers, someone who had something she wanted. "You're right," I said quietly. "We are family. And you taught me an important lesson about what family means." I turned to the officer. "I want them out. All of them. Now." They removed their things that day. My father didn't speak to me again. He just kept his head down, loading boxes into his truck, while my mother cried and my sister called me every horrible name she could think of. When they were gone, I stood in my living room, my blue living room that I'd painted myself, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months.
Peace.
The lawsuit took 6 months. I won. They had to pay my legal fees, compensation for emotional distress, and my father lost his credibility in our community when people found out what he'd done. My sister moved back in with them, and last I heard, they barely speak to each other anymore. Turns out betrayal destroys from the inside out, even when you're the one doing it. Do I regret it? Do I wish I'd given them a second chance?
Sometimes I think about that.
But then I remember lying in that hospital bed, alone, while they plotted against me. I remember my father's cold eyes saying, "It's no longer yours." And I realized they had their chance. They had 29 years of chances. They chose who they were. And I chose who I would become. I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're at your lowest. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who only want you around when it benefits them. My house is mine again. My life is mine again. And I've never been more alone or more free.